Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, February the 11th, 2025. The time is 6:06 p.m. and I now call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is conducted via remote participation. We will make recordings available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. My name is Sarah Lewis. I am the co-chair for tonight's meeting, along with Estella, who is co-chairing with me. And we're going to start with a roll call vote of the commission members. Frank Valdez, not present. Andrew Abba.
Present.
Deborah Fennick.
Present, and I have my camera off because I don't think I have a good connection.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. And Tim Talon.
Present.
All right, with 3 members present, we do have a quorum. Before we get going, as we only have 4 members currently, I would like to remind anybody that's listening in that we have vacancies on this very commission. So there is 1 full position and 2 alternate positions available. So if you are interested, please reach out to urbandesign@somervillema.gov. And that concludes the public service announcement for this evening. All right, moving on. Our first order of business is the meeting minutes from January 14th. Does anybody have any comments or corrections?
So my only comment, and I don't know if this needs to be a correction, but was for 151 Linwood Street, the U-Haul site. I think we had talked a lot about creating the opportunity to create a building here, and really the need to create a building here that's appropriate for brick bottom. And I don't see that really reflected in the minutes, but specifically character of the brick bottom district.
Okay. Character, sorry, I'm scribbling notes. Opportunity and need for building in the character of the brick bottom district. Okay. Anyone else have any comments or corrections?
I don't know that it's either, but it does still say that Tim Hood is an alternate. Is that accurate at the top?
No, it is not. So we'll make that correction. Okay. All right. So can I get a motion to approve the January 14th meeting minutes as amended?
The motion.
Motion
Second.
by Andrew, second by Tim. Roll call vote. Andrew.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Deborah.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. We have a design review, a design recommendation for 44 White Street. Do we have any comments or corrections on that recommendation? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the design recommendation for 44 White Street?
Motioned.
Second.
Moved by Andrew, seconded by Tim. Roll call vote. Andrew.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Deborah.
I froze out. Can you say what we're voting on?
Oh, the 44 White Street design recommendation.
Oh, okay. Yes. And I'm gonna
Thank you.
sign in again because keeps happening to me.
Okay, all right.
So I'll be back in a moment.
Okay, then we will pause for a second until Deborah logs back in so that we can maintain quorum. I don't think the meeting minutes necessarily need to acknowledge a recess unless it takes her longer than a few. All right, Deborah is back. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. All right, so our design review for this evening is 199 Elm Street. This is an MR4 district and a general building. So if the applicant or those willing to speak could raise their hands, I will promote. And who is sharing screen? Paul, is that going to be you?
Yes, that will be me.
Okay.
I don't seem to have oh, here we go.
I'm working on
Sorry.
it. Hopefully you can now. Promoted to panelist.
There we go.
All right. All right, and hopefully Pablo and Shauna can also speak.
I can speak, I think.
All right.
I think I can speak. I don't think I have video, but that's
Yeah.
fine. Doesn't
Same.
All
matter.
right, let me, oh yeah, okay.
There we go.
Hold on. Yeah. All right.
Right. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
You're very welcome. I'm going to remind the applicant that you have about 20 minutes to present. And then we can start discussion. So
Great.
please.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, it says sharing is not turned on. Let's see. Try that again.
Yeah, did that
Okay.
work?
It looks like it's going to, yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. Good to see you all, and thanks for having us tonight. I'm Paul Miller, principal at Neighbor Architects, and Pablo Picker from Picker Development Construction is here with me on the call. He's the owner, and we'll be presenting our designs for 199 Elm Street today. We're excited to share our designs with you and get your feedback. So I'll start with a brief kind of contextual overview of the project, and then we'll get into the proposed building design. So as Sarah stated, it's an MR4 zoning district. We're proposing a 4-floor building, a ground floor commercial space with 3 floors of residential apartments above it, and right around 15,000 square feet. It's a transit-oriented development, so no car parking is required or provided. It'll be an all-electric building and passive house certified to meet the requirements of the specialized energy code. This is a existing conditions plot plan. You can see the site outlined in the dark line at the center with the existing 2-story structure that we're proposing to demolish as part of the project. There are no significant trees that we're proposing to take down. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but we are proposing to fill in the existing curb cut. And here's a photograph of that existing 2-story building that we're proposing to demolish as part of the project. And a view looking north on Elm Street towards Davis Square. You can see these kind of 1-story commercial buildings that are existing. A couple of those step up to 2 floors as they get further back from the street. Yeah, I think the kind of the most notable thing about the context here is that it is a pretty successful little stretch of restaurants right now. Posto's just recently left, but Revival and Dachshund are both terrific, and provide the kind of vibrant street life that is that people know of in Davis Square, just a little bit further up to the north. Another thing that's important to know about the context is that on the west side of Elm Street, it's Cambridge. On the east side, it's Somerville. Here's a view looking kind of south down Elm Street. Again, you can see Revival and Dachshund and Posto kind of going off to the right there. And here's a kind of transit map showing the distances to the T and to bus lines, as well as amenities. We're in close proximity to both the Davis Square Red Line stop and the Porter Square Red Line stop. About a quarter mile to Davis and just a little bit more than that to Porter. Plenty of, it's a very walkable area, lots of great amenities. There are grocery stores, parks, of course, the Somerville Community Path. There's a bike store close by, which will be important to people who are using their bikes as a kind of their form of transit, as well as other amenities like the Somerville Theater. And then this is an aerial view looking to the north. You can see our site outlined in red in the foreground. It's an MR4 site surrounded by MR4 sites. We wanted to talk a little bit about the city planning context here too, because we are in the immediate context, it's 1-story buildings right now, kind of mix of 1- and 2-story buildings. But the area has been identified for enhancement in Summer Vision 2040. As I just said, the surrounding sites are all MR4, so there's kind of anticipation of development in this area. And then in the some other city planning documents, we're excited to see ideas that the city is exploring for Davis Square. The blue section here is showing the area that's identified in the Davis Square commercial area plan as the Elmway. And it's a proposal that would close that street to cars to kind of celebrate the vibrant street life that's there, and create really, kind of even more walkable environment. And then also the Cutter Plaza here in green, also part of the Davis Square commercial area plan, that would close down one of the streets here and create a larger public plaza, replacing a few parking spaces that are currently there. So we're excited to be working near this very walkable, kind of vibrant commercial context, and we want to keep that in mind as we start designing the building so that our building can become a continuation of that. Okay, so here's a site plan of the building, and really where we started was thinking about the entrance and also that context that I was just talking about. Revival is here to the kind of south page bottom. There's a really nice mural on the side of their building, as well as a couple windows close to the lot line. And from the start, we wanted to try to see if we could preserve that because of the activity that's there throughout the day, and also just the kind of vibrancy of that mural and the energy that it brings to the street life there. We really liked that. So the first move that we did was to pull the building back and create a small entry court here, where both the commercial entry and the residential entry occur. The residential entries on the bottom and commercial entry on the top. You can see in the residential lobby, we have a large bike room at the back, as well as stairs going up to the residential levels and the elevator. Most of the rest of the space is reserved for the commercial use. We're anticipating either a retail or restaurant tenant, with restaurant sort of preferred. But we're, kind of depends how the project moves along and the tenant that we can find. But we'd love, excuse me, we would love to see it be a restaurant. And so that's kind of what we're keeping in mind as we're designing. Another thing about this entry court is that it's where we'll locate an in-ground transformer. Rather than putting it in the facade, we strongly prefer to get it in the ground if we can, because we think that it makes a much better street presence for the building. And so we're kind of making use of that entry court in that way. We're also proposing a couple of street trees on Elm Street. And Shauna will talk a little bit more about that in the landscape section of the presentation. Okay, so moving up, this is a typical residential floor. The plans, we're still developing them, but it gives a sense of the direction. We're looking at a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom units. Excuse me. And so the building steps twice more on these upper floors to create space for balconies for each street-facing unit, and also to help break down the scale of the building, which we'll see more when we get into the renderings. The circulation kind of cleanly divides the building in half lengthwise, so there's a clear front and rear to the massing, and that's another thing that we explore through the facade design options, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. And this is a roof plan. Again, Sean is going to show more of the roof plan during the landscape section, but we wanted to just show the extents of the roof deck with its 5-foot setbacks from the facade walls below. We're not showing any rooftop equipment here because it is an all-electric building, and we're anticipating that we'll be using the EFOCA heat pump system, which vents through the facade, does not require an outdoor unit on the roof. Okay, so kind of working towards facade design now. I mentioned the revival mural earlier, which is here in the lower right. And you can see a couple of the other murals along this section of Elm Street, on Daxon, on the wall at Posto, and another one on the opposite side of Revival. We really like it's kind of the most notable thing about the visual context here. We really like the colorful, playful nature of these, and we wanted to kind of reference that in our facade design in some way. And then also just thinking about the context of being in Davis Square, you see a lot of brick. The kind of sandy buff color is prominent throughout Davis. And also, of course, the commercial spaces that Davis Square is known for. Okay, so here's the 3 options that we're going to be presenting tonight. Our preferred option is at the left. We're showing a kind of dark charcoal colored base as the kind of commercial storefront. So a lot of glazing there, with a buff brick facade on top for the residential levels. The second option is a super colorful one that we're imagining is kind of a range of blues and purples that create a little bit of an ombre effect. Those would be glazed brick. And the third option is a slightly different massing, where it's only a single step. The balconies are continuous across the front. And that's a combination of a blue tile and a kind of green colored base. And we'll go one by one through these. The preferred option is the front elevation of it, with the street trees that are proposed in the foreground. And then again, just turning the trees off so everyone can see the proposed design a little bit better. Just want to point out a couple things here. You'll see some more color as we turn the corners, but we were thinking that the balcony railings could be a place where we can bring some of that color in, play with the geometry a little bit. I think this is a place where it's kind of ripe for development in the, as we develop the design of the project. And you can really start to get a sense of how the ground floor of this building ties into its context, striking a similar height datum, excuse me, and creating that little entry court, which plays nicely with the entry, kind of the courtyard between Revival and Daxon, which is a heavily used kind of space during the summer. We like that it creates a nice rhythm there. We like that height datum being continuous. And we really like the continuation of that commercial use. And then this is the colorful glazed brick option. Similar massing here, but a little bit less articulation at the base. This one was meant to be more monolithic and creating these L shapes from the top to the base. And then the third option with the single step and the longer balconies. And just to zoom in here to give a little bit more of a sense of that, the street life that we're imagining. Option 2, option 3. And then this is an oblique view looking, so you can see the south side of the building. Sorry about that. I think I'm fighting off a little cold here. South side of the building, these are lot line walls. And so what we're working to do here is use the plan logic that I showed in that typical upper floor plan, express the program of the building on the outside, use those stair towers to kind of cut the long faces of the building in half. And so what you get is apartment with chunks on the lot line walls rather than like a very long blank wall. And so what we're imagining here is a colorful material. We're showing a glazed brick. I think it also could be metal panel potentially with like kind of, we could play with the patterning there, but the color I think is important. Something that I like, this blue color, it's picking up on the color of the sky a little bit and really strongly kind of demarcates that two sides of the building, divides the building into a front and a back. Okay, second version here, that ombre scheme. This one to me, like, kind of shows how maybe it's less successful on the side here with the continuous face. And then the third version with the single step massing. Okay, and then this is looking at from the direction of Davis Square to the south, with trees and then without trees. Here we're playing with the parapet heights a little bit to create some, more dynamic massing as it's facing towards Davis Square. I actually failed to talk about at the front of the building, the parapet walls are stepping up just slightly, a foot at each step to help create kind of more kind of massing differentiation across those steps and a more dynamic street-facing facade. So as you turn the corner here, those parapet walls, we continue playing with them to create that dynamic massing. Second option, the glazed brick. And then the third option with the longer balconies. And then just to zoom into that entry court, again, I think this is, really where the project started from. And I'm really happy with the direction here that we have this in our preferred option, like a really clear storefront elevation datum that's marked by this cornice line here. and the darker material tying nicely into the Revival facade, and preserving that mural that we talked about at the beginning, as well as the windows that are in Revival at the lot line. And then this is the second version, the glazed brick. The third one with the green base. And then a few street views here. This is on Elm Street on the sidewalk looking south. One thing that's not here yet that we plan to add is our operable windows. That's something you see at Revival and other storefronts in Davis. Diesel Cafe has a really nice operable facade. They're roll-up doors in that case that really open it up to the street. And in fair weather, it's great. It's a really nice thing to have. So that's something that we want to add as we continue developing the design. And the second version here, kind of testing an awning. And the third version, testing of the storefront coming all the way down to the ground. This is not my preference to bring this all. I think it's actually better with the storefront up a little bit for durability reasons, and also just to create a little bit of separation between inside and outside. That's it. So that's where we are with the architecture. Preferred option here at the left, and the other two at center and right. I'm going to hand it over to Shauna to talk about landscape.
Thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you all. So in terms of landscape for this project, most of it is actually on the roof. But first of all, I'll talk about the streetscape. So the streetscape, as Paul mentioned, we have subsurface transformers. And so that area is we're using pavers. It will not be permeable pavers, of course. But even beyond that, we have about 9.5 feet of streetscape, 11.5 if we include that paver strip. And so within the first 4.5 feet, we're proposing tree pits. You'll notice, or you may have noticed on the photographs, that the wires are pretty low. So we're currently proposing hedge maples, but we're going to have to continue to work with Vanessa and the tree warden as we go ahead to see if how much height we can really get in that first strip. And then we're showing tables and chairs and planter and movable pots in the back, but really understand that may be spill out space if there's a restaurant or something in the back. So we're not counting any of that in our green score, but we are proposing permeable pavers in that area. So the most of our landscape is actually on the roof. And in that area, we're looking at really a pretty large roof deck. The idea being that we wanted to create, first of all, it's going to be, pretty amazing to be up there and be able to view all the activity in Davis Square and on the street and at the neighboring restaurants. But the idea is to create a number of different pockets of seating using planting to define that. And so at the outer edge, it will be a grass and meadow plant, pollinator and grass planting. And then we have two planters that are erroneously labeled movable planters, or one of them is. They're immovable planters because we want to irrigate them, and they'll be primarily a shrub, evergreen and flowering shrub planter. And then a big long band across horizontally on the plan that we're not counting into our green score currently, although I think we could probably get some credit for it. But the idea is for it to be vegetable gardens, so that we're still, even without that, we're meeting the green score, but to provide kind of significant outdoor planting for the 10 residents, we think is actually a really, really nice thing to do, as well as outdoor grills and things. So that's kind of the big picture for the landscape. I don't know if we have other views. Yeah, just looking at you know, our plant palette. And then some precedent images of some shade canopies, which we're definitely looking at, including shade canopies from, you know, although they're not visible from the street, but up above. The idea, like in the bottom left, the perimeter being not just a sedum planting, but something that actually has texture and depth and complexity to it, even though sedum can as well. And then these two other immovable planters that will provide a different level of experience and carry structure and green color through the winter. And then, as I mentioned, this vegetable garden planting. And you know, as I had mentioned, we're currently meeting the green score. And that's not without counting with excluding the vegetable planters, which, you know, even on a porosity level should have some value as well.
So that's all we had. We're happy to take comments and questions from you all.
I will open it up to the commission. I do want to point out one thing, just because we've had difficulties on these basically infill narrow urban lots before. Please, please make sure you talk to Eversource and understand what a transformer, whether a transformer is necessary, and how that might be accommodated on the site, because it will, if it has to be above ground, take up a third at least of your front facade for the first 2 floors because of their clearance requirements. So that is a critical piece. The other thing, and I think Shauna had said it, you are set back 12 feet from the curb, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. But yeah, please,
Yep.
please check with Eversource sooner than later, because you don't want to have to come back and do this all over again if it has to be a transformer above ground.
So we've been told
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
that we could do either. Have you been hearing otherwise from other projects?
It just depends where it can be located, because right now, having it in the public right of way is not an option either. We are working with Eversource to figure out what that looks like. And so if it'll have to be on the private property, the only place it could be an underground vault right now is sort of your entryway.
That's right.
Which
Yeah,
I
and
don't,
that's
that's the
the
intent.
intention.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
that's where we, that's, sorry if that wasn't clear.
Yeah.
That's what we intended. And it's shown, we're actually masking it here in our ground floor plan. Let's see, is it in the,
Yeah, we're
And-
we're actually, and I know this is also
It's-
with the city
Got it.
council, Paul, just quickly. I know the city council has also brought this up. And it's I know it's super complex on many levels, but our understanding is that we can put it underground within our site, which is the intent, and part of that is really trying to push for the city, you know, the streetscape, this wall that feels so disruptive, having to carve out so much for the transformer. So that's our intent, but Sarah, your point's well taken. We are in contact with Eversource to kind of.
Awesome.
And-
Thank
and-
you. That's like that's a massive peace of mind, because I know
Yeah.
it's a big deal. And I know the
Trust.
commission has dealt with other projects where it's sort of been changed at the last minute just because it had to be.
We-
So,
we-
And
Yeah.
we have
Thank you.
we've also recently worked on a project with a subsurface transformer at the entry threshold to the laneway.
At
Yes.
Lake Street. Yes.
Yeah, and using paver grates so we can put the pavers on top. So you can see the perimeter line, but the paving surface is continuous.
All right. Terrific.
And this
Thank you
is
so much.
based on, we use the Eversource standard vault size. We got that directly from them. And this accommodates that fully on our parcel. So we believe that we're compliant, and we understood from previous conversations with Eversource that this would be possible, but we will definitely check back in with them because it would be a real shame, for process, but also just for the building if it had to go in the ground floor.
And for the street. It wouldn't be. it
For
wouldn't
the
be
street.
for
No,
the
I mean,
street,
that's what I mean is that, we really,
Public.
we're excited about
We-
creating this, another restaurant here in this row. And, filling half of that commercial space with the transformer would be unfortunate.
Yeah, so
We
thank
agree.
you, thank you for that.
We agree and appreciate that you have had the conversations with Eversource already and confirmed feasibility of this, because that is the right approach to the transformer. So that's great. Thank you.
Good.
I don't have any questions, Tim, or Deborah,
Oh.
if you guys want to go.
So I appreciate the planning context that you started with too, because I know there's a lot of discussion, especially given what's happened in Cambridge this week,
Yeah.
about how to accommodate density in cities that are essentially built out. And this does feel like the right location, close to a square, close to transit, adjacent to a neighborhood, but in an area that's clearly commercial that can support this type of density. And I think you've done a really nice job with the design. I've got a couple questions, but overall, I think this is a good project.
Thank you.
Go for your questions, Tim. I don't have any questions. Your presentation was very clear and what do you call it? And provocative. I mean, I think it was very well done.
Yeah, I agree. So my only question is about the retail storefront, and two things. One, if you've thought about signage and if there's a defined location for a signage ban, because I think that's part of what gives Davis Square its character too. There's large signage on these storefronts, and then the entrance into the retail space. It almost, and how you. When I first looked at this, I thought the egress door on the stair was the entry into the retail area, and it's not. But just wondering if you thought about how to kind of distinguish that retail entry from the residential entries.
Yeah, it's a good question. We do think that the cornice band is going to have to get a little thicker, like after kind of finishing this first round. That was like one thing that we noticed as a design team, that just it might in reality have to, for structure, have to get a little thicker, and that will also create a more prominent kind of signage band. That's where I see it going. I think you see that in many cases in Davis Square, that the signage kind of fits on that cornice there, primary signage, and then there's also secondary signage in the windows. So that's, I think, the primary location that I imagine signage. Your question about how to distinguish the commercial entrance is a good one. And it may be that this egress door might want to not be glass. Maybe that's kind of confusing the reading here, and that maybe a combination of signage and this door being glass is the way that you understand this as the commercial entrance.
And also maybe, yeah, Tim, that's it's an awesome observation. Looking at it now from that context, I also wonder, Paul and Commission, if right around the entrance to the commercial space, there's some sort of subtle material change, or maybe some sort of continuous of signage, kind of where your cursor was, Paul. In that small area, but it's a great point. I mean, this is a huge part of this development is to continue that line that revival so prominently shows. So I think I agree. It needs some work.
Yeah, I'm also just wondering now if we should consider it. I know that there's a preference. It's written into the zoning ordinance somewhere that there's a preference for the commercial entrance being on one or the other side of the space. So it is possible that it could go more like here, but we'd have to think about what that means for the commercial layout. And I don't know.
I also just to that point, Paul, quickly, I mean, I do like the wall of glass there. I think it really reads well. I'll leave it to the commission to give their opinion, but for me at least, that's an important part of like that relationship between the public and the commercial space.
Yeah, it's really nice here too, like at the entrance when you have that glass corner. I really like that part of the design.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could see it working, having that entrance recessed. Yeah, I could see that working really well for the internal circulation inside
Mhm.
too. I mean, maybe it's just changing, not carrying that cornice all the way over the residential doors, or if it's going to get thicker, which I think is fine. I mean, it's probably good to accommodate larger signage. Maybe it becomes much thicker. Maybe it kind of transitions to a solid wall at the residential doors or something like that to further distinguish them.
Yeah, so I apologize if I'm breaking up. My connection's unstable. But I was really intrigued in your presentation about how you were going to deploy color in this. And at first, looking at these frontally, I was a little disappointed with the one that you preferred. But once you swung around and showed this from the angles that people are really going to appreciate this from if they're not across the street, I think it's very convincing. And and sort of subtle in a funny way. At the entry, it's neutral and deferential to the graphic, the graphic wall on Revival. But then you're starting to use some color. I think the color that you've picked for in relationship to the buff is really appropriate. And I think having something playful on the that's colorful in the railings is a good idea and all that. But yeah, but maybe color is what you use to help identify the commercial door. I can see there being something next to the door, whether it's art or it's just somehow color that distinguishes it, and it's just more playful. Because I think
That's cool.
I agree with your colleagues that base is really nice. Actually, putting your door where it is rather than into the front face of this just feels, I don't know, more accommodating. And also, I think, architecturally, it holds together much better the way you have it. So I think maybe that would be a strategy. But I'm very pleased. I know that site. I walk by it all the time, except I never noticed the building that was on it, and I never imagined it could be it could be developed this much and so successfully. So, and Sean, I think the landscape is all very it's very exciting. It'll be great for the residents there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with everything that Deborah said. I think it's a really nice building. It's contextual while still being playful and contemporary. And I also just appreciate it that it's unique, but it's not screaming at us. It's a mid-block building. It's not on the point where the Domino's is. It's going to fit in with other things that are going to be reflective of a more prominent location. So I appreciate that it kind of knows what it is and it's doing it well. So good job.
Thank you.
All right. I am reading between the lines and hearing that we need to take a vote. So can I get a motion from the commission to what are we motioning on? We're motioning on acceptance of the preferred design option, massing option as shown.
So moved.
Moved by Deborah, seconded by
Second.
Andrew. All right, roll call vote. Andrew,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
All right, we do have two other votes to take. The first one is, I need a motion that the design guidelines for the MR4 district have been met.
So motioned.
Second,
Motion by Andrew, second by Deborah. Roll call vote. Andrew,
Yes.
Deborah,
yes.
and Tim.
Yes.
All right, and the final vote this evening is, would the commission like to add any specific guidance to the recommendation?
I think we talked about the retail storefront, distinguishing the retail entry from the residential entries, potentially using color to do that, and adding depth to the corner span to accommodate larger signage.
All right.
Else? I think that's it.
All right, then do I have a motion for the additional design guidance to include the more detail to identify the retail entry, possibly with color, and additional depth to accommodate signage band?
So moved.
Moved by Deborah, second
Second.
by Andrew. Roll call vote. Andrew,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
and Tim.
Yes.
All right, thank you, team. And thank you, commission. One and done. Great job, Paul.
Thank you.
Good job, Paul.
We're-
Don't
No,
tell
thanks
the
everyone
others.
for,
We won't tell
we
you.
won't, we won't.
We're very,
All right.
we're excited for the site.
This is great. It's
and
great to get your feedback and appreciate the positive comments as well. We're excited to see this move forward.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you all. Have a good
Thanks,
evening.
everyone. Okay,
well.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, I am. Oh, it looks like I don't have to down promote anybody. They all left. All right, so our other business for this evening, Tim and I had been having conversations about some ongoing pieces that we wanted to talk about. And so there are 3 items that I had listed on this agenda, knowing that we had one case and can talk about other items at other meetings, but we hadn't talked about what the priority of the items might be. So please bear with me as I made a guess on this go around. So the first one is an update on the Arts and Innovation District. This is the area known that had been a series of public meetings at Central Somerville Avenue, otherwise the area known as Sumanova. So these meetings had taken place in the end of last year. Where there's a couple of pieces that have to do with that at the moment, most of them zoning. So there is a base research and development district that is going to be adopted. So it's going to change the base from Fab to R&D. That allows Greentown Labs to remain operational and to grow, which is, for that climate hub, one of the things that the city wants to maintain and expand. What that then does is it opens the possibility for an overlay district to be written to allow some of the larger development that the neighborhood was okay with as well, which is what the meeting series had come to terms with. That is now called the Arts and Innovation Overlay District. That is currently going through internal city review. I believe it's in legal, but honestly, I'm not quite sure right now. But that has been drafted, and we're expecting that to come to a land use committee agenda in the next couple of weeks. The third piece of the Arts and Innovation District is an urban design framework plan, which is similar to Boynton Yards. It is a neighborhood plan light, for lack of a better term. So it sets some parameters and some requirements that when the developer comes in with a master plan special permit, we, the city, know that there are certain minimum requirements that they have to meet. So for example, one of the things that came out of the neighborhood meetings was a community center. So knowing that Summon Nova has, if you're familiar with their operations, they currently have the dojo, which is small but really well attended, super programming. And so expanding that to be able to accommodate more of the city's youth and different activities. The idea of where the open spaces might be and what the minimum percentage of those open spaces are. So in this area where it is more landlocked, we know we need some space, but the idea of having a large park here is not really what we're looking for, given the proximity to Argenziano and the entire network of spaces. But having an outdoor civic space, especially where the community center can overflow for indoor and outdoor activities, that is something that will be in the urban design framework. That is something that we're talking about in-house right now, and do not have a draft of that yet, but currently the PPZ is working on pulling that together. Where it
And
gets
Sarah, that's the urban design framework is produced internally by the city?
internally, yes.
Okay.
And it tries to get to, when we had the meetings with the neighborhood, there are certain things that you can't put in zoning. And so the urban design framework gives us the opportunity to put some of those neighborhood desires and needs into that document as far as requirements go. There are other things that will happen in the community benefits agreement that the developer is negotiating with the Union Square Neighborhood Council, but that's separate than the city's regulations and requirements.
The urban design framework is created after the zoning is put in place?
It goes hand in hand.
Okay.
And so that's sort of why we are working on that simultaneously. It's actually a lot of times it is harder to write the UDF actually than it is the zoning language, just because of what we're trying to regulate and inform, without it being a full neighborhood plan. So it does go hand in hand, because we also don't want to duplicate.
Yeah, but I think there's a bit of and I know we've talked about this, there's a bit of a chicken and egg issue, which is, do you put zoning in place and then create a urban design plan based on that? Or do you really want to understand the urban design options, implications, and then write zoning to accommodate what is hopefully a good plan?
Yeah,
I know
that's-
I've heard a couple reviews at Boston's BCDC when they've reviewed urban design plans as part of PUDs there. 425 Medford Street in Charlestown. I sat in on those just by chance because I was there that night, and the reviews were excellent. I think the BCDC was able to get into a lot of the issues that the members of this commission really care about, not just reviewing buildings themselves, but the size and form and shape and the spaces in between buildings and the configurations of open spaces and the character of streets, things like that. So I know we don't have a process like that here. Or we do, I guess it's the master plan special permit, but it occurs once the big decisions have already been made. Zoning's in place, the urban design framework's in place, and then this very detailed plan is created. But it's happening kind of before, feels a little like it's happening before all the options have been evaluated.
Oh, yeah, I hear what you're saying. A lot of that happens during the planning process. So like a lot of those, like the building height decisions and the massing for the step backs and things like that, that will appear in the zoning, affect the urban design framework plan. But a lot of that was decided during the public process. So one of the things that we can definitely do is as we get a draft of the A&I UDF, perhaps that's something that we can review together as a commission. I will have to find out sort of how the public unveiling and when all that happens, because obviously we are a public meeting. But let me look into that and let you know if that's something that we can discuss as a group all together. Because I think that would be informative. And like I said, I do think at some point we need to look at both the zoning and the UDF hand in hand, because they came out of the same process that is also actually informing the community benefits agreement. So there was a lot of discussion, and because of sort of the different tools that we have, it kind of got messy, and so unwrapping it has been a little more complicated than we anticipated.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the rare moment where Boston's process kind of makes more sense in some degree. Definitely have been through that BCDC process many times.
I said this in the meeting, sort of in the Central Somerville Avenue meetings, that this is not the order that we would like to do things. Sort of it's like we believe in planning first. This was just a conflux of different elements that came together and sort of forced as a community to respond. But I mean, it was quite great that sort of the city and the neighbors, the residents and the developer were all working together, and that doesn't happen very often. So it was really quite refreshing to have that collaboration.
I would say one request that I would have, if and when we end up reviewing projects that fall within the framework, if we could have that presented to us like in the meeting before we're reviewing the project, that would be really helpful, because I'm not following this process, and it's definitely been projects where we've been kind of like, here's brick bottom or here's assembly, and like kind of gotten the documentation and the proposal in the same week, and I don't have time to kind of fully digest everything in a way that makes it very useful for response.
All right, that's a great idea.
And I know we're not here to make sure that it's compliant for zoning, but just to make sure that we understand the intent.
Yeah, for wherever there's sort of special areas. Okay. Okay. One of the other items that we had started talking about was sort of the nature of design guidelines. So as part of your package, I had pulled out pages from the brick bottom design guidelines. we can talk about those in detail, but I think from the conversations I've had with each of you at different times, I think it's probably better if we talk about when is the best time to engage for projects moving forward. So for example, one of the things that Brick Bottom was adopted, those guidelines were things that we had been told in the public process, and it was more about the industrial sort of heritage and character of the site. Somewhere like Assembly, where we're about to release the updated draft of that plan, does not currently have guidelines in the draft neighborhood plan update. We will, or would like to, as in some of the other zoning districts, have design guidelines referenced when we rewrite the zoning for Assembly. How we do that to get you guys involved, I think it might be a meeting that is, my recommendation would be that once the plan is released to the public, that we have a meeting to talk about what those design guidelines could be. Now, it doesn't have to be immediate because it will take a while to write the zoning. But I think as far as using the Urban Design Commission to assist with that portion of it is something that I have thought of that would be useful moving forward. But I wanted to make sure, I wanted us to talk about it as a group because I'm sure each of you have ideas as well as to when the right time and place might be for those conversations.
I think use us more and often. I don't know. That's generally.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that makes sense once a draft version of the plan is released to the public for this commission to review and provide input, because ultimately we're tasked with applying these design guidelines.
Yeah.
And I think in a case like Brick Bottom, I know the general framework for the guidelines was provided. It came out of the public process, but the actual detailed design guidelines themselves, I'm sure were written by someone and didn't come directly out of that public process. So it would be great to have the opportunity to provide input on those.
Got it.
It was great to see them too, because it definitely reinforced that the project that we saw did not meet them.
Yeah.
I concur with my colleagues.
All right, I'm making sure I've got notes.
Does the zoning
Okay.
ordinance describe the review process for a neighborhood plan?
No, because the neighborhood plan is separate than the zoning ordinance. That's a different process that's part of planning board business under, it's only loosely referred to under 40A. Not really as part of the ordinance.
So as part of the planning board's rules of policy and procedure, does that describe the process for reviewing?
I believe so vaguely. Let me double check on that. That actually might lead very well into the next item of other business as well.
Well, can I just, one more thing on
Yeah.
design guidelines?
Yeah.
One of the things I've had in my head for a long time is the desire to, we are applying the design guidelines that are in the zoning ordinance for each district every time we review a project. And we now have 5 years of experience applying these design guidelines. I was thinking it would be interesting to now kind of step back and take a look at those and assess, are there additional guidelines we might recommend? How are the guidelines we have working? And that could result perhaps in a recommendation to the land use committee for modifications or not, whatever we come up with. But my sense is that some of the guidelines are working better than others. And there's some missing pieces. There's things that we talk about every project that are not referenced at all in the design guidelines. And there's others like, horizontal siding should be, banned in Somerville. Well, we review projects all the time that have horizontal siding. We might want to, assess, is there another guideline that captures, I think, Somerville's planning documents and goals.
All right, I can add that to the other business items list. Perhaps that is we go through that line by line.
Yeah, or it could be a subcommittee, like Andrew and I went through the rules of policy and procedure. We scheduled meetings that were ostensibly public and just
They were
spent some
public.
time. They were public. Yeah,
We announced it.
that's true. I mean, this could be a 2-hour meeting that whoever is interested gets together and talks through it.
I mean, we can either way. Let me know how you would like to proceed. I mean, if you want to do a subcommittee or if you want to do it as a group as part of one of these meetings, I think I would recommend that's the only item of other business on one of our regular meeting agendas to go through all of those pieces. But we've been having fairly light agendas as far as reviews go. So I think we've got some time already scheduled without trying to overburden you guys.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to try to make it a part of, and we are aware of it and we're as concise as we can be with our reviews also.
Yeah. All right, I can add that to an upcoming agenda once I see what we've got coming on. The final item that I had put on this evening's agenda was about a potential meeting, both with the land use committee and the planning board. I was assuming that those would be separate. I have not spoken to the chair of the land use committee yet, but I have been working with the planning board coordinator and the chair. And so one of the requests that came back was definitely willing to meet, but the planning board would like to have an agenda of items for discussion, so that everybody's sort of on the same page ahead of time, given that, we are, I'm obviously openly meeting law is part of it, but making sure if there's preparation time needed, I think they want to make sure that they're ready as well.
That would be amazing. Crazy amazing. I would say in terms of what I would hope to get out of a meeting with the planning board is our task is to recommend and give them guidance. And I'd like to understand if the work that we're doing right now is achieving that goal. And if not, what we could be doing or how could we be doing our job better or differently so that we are a meaningful part of the process, and that our recommendations are given credence. And if, frankly, they don't want them, then that's something I'd like to know as well, because it doesn't always The perception is that it doesn't always get there, and it doesn't really matter what we do in here a lot of the time. Does not motivate me to be sitting in the office on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Understood. All right, let me just clarify. So I got 3 questions right there. Is what we're doing working to achieve the goal of providing recommendations and guidance? What could be done differently? And then there was a 3rd question that you had put in there as well.
It was probably just a backhanded complaint. So I think the first 2 were fine.
Okay, all right.
And maybe just an overview of the commission, the makeup of this commission, just to help them better understand kind of the particular expertise that the people in this commission brings.
And I mean, I'll admit I'm a bad, I don't know, government groupie. I don't go to planning board meetings. I don't sit and watch them. That sounds like hell to me. So just a better understanding of again, like how they are using our recommendation in the first place. Like, is it actually a meaningful part of their process in any way?
Okay. Okay, I think those are good questions that are going to be easy to communicate. If we can do, because I haven't had a conversation yet with anyone representing the land use committee. If it's okay with you, as you think about things for I think for the land use committee, sort of the commission overview and makeup is probably good, but I think we're going to have sort of a different set of questions for the land use committee. As sort of there isn't any formal interaction right now. And I think asking the question, sort of how can we help you is going to be too broad. It's going to be too broad brush. So if we can all sort of think a little bit about what an agenda might look like for a meeting with the land use committee, I think that would be good, because I'd like to, because they're a very different body, I'd like to present essentially IGA with an agenda and say, this is what, sort of come to them with an agenda and say, this is what we, the UDC, would like to meet with the land use committee and talk about.
So I think if we are going to take on the task of reviewing the design guidelines, that would be something to discuss with them, because ultimately it would be a recommendation to the land use committee. They'd need to pass updated zoning to incorporate it. I think the other thing to discuss with them is every time I talk to someone in the city of Somerville and say I'm on the Urban Design Commission, they assume that we review urban design plans. But the Urban Design Commission has no formal role in that. So are there process updates that we could make to give the commission a role in reviewing urban design plans?
What's our the regulations that govern us, our relationship between the land use committee and the urban design committee by ordinance?
There is no direct connection currently. Basically you as individual Somerville residents obviously can go to any public meeting at any time and can represent that you are a member of the Urban Design Commission, but a direct connection, not correlation, connection between the two bodies currently does not exist. All right, I think that's good. All right, I will start that conversation with IGA and see sort of where that goes. Okay. All right, this is super helpful. Is there anything else on these items that you want to throw at me? Also for the next meeting, is there a particular topic that you would like to add as an other business item? And that is something that you can obviously email me offline too as you think about it, but I wanted to at least plant that seed.
I have one comment and I guess one dumb question. So I just went to the website for the City for Urban Design Commission, and Sherry and Tim Hood are still listed. Just in terms of like making it really obvious that we're trying to get new members, could we remove those and note the vacancies?
Yeah, that has been, I will once again reach out and ask for that to be done. The on the B Somerville page is where all the call for volunteers is, but let me talk to web services and see what we can do.
Where is it? That was my next question, is like, where do you guys advertise?
It's I can't remember. It's called B Somerville.
I get Bianca and Eric's wedding page. Is it
Hold on, I'm
spelled-
putting something in the chat right now. I just put a link in the chat. Hopefully everyone can see that. So that's where the boards and commissions are usually advertised. And then in addition to that, then social media pushes go out on a regular basis as well. One of the things that we were talking about internally today is perhaps there are other places like, so for example, the Historic Preservation Commission, because they're under a completely different law at the state level, they have obligations to advertise to like AIA, the Board of Realtors, because they have specific professions that are supposed to sit on the HPC. Some of those also, we have never reached out to any of those professional organizations to advertise for any of our other boards and commissions, only because the HPC is the only one that required it. So we've been talking internally. It's like trying to figure out how do we do that to try to get, because obviously that's where the professionals are that we would like to volunteer on these boards. So far, I've had one letter of interest and one application from the previous call that went out. So we need to spread it further and wider.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. It just doesn't feel like this is working.
Right.
ASLA, or sorry, BSLA would be a great place to find landscape architects. Definitely would find more than this website.
Yeah. If you think of anywhere else too, please please ping me. I also thought of the other one that we were speaking about today was sort of the local APA chapters.
ULI too, like, I mean,
Yeah.
the folks who are, I'm on the urban design, it's also called the UDC, Urban Design Committee. I always get them confused, but I mean, the folks that are on that have the same set of interests.
Yeah. ULI will probably charge us money, but at least let me
Yeah,
find the facts.
fair.
And did you mention BSA?
That
Yeah,
one.
I just
Uh,
kept thinking of it as the local AIA, but yeah, BSA. All right, if you think of anywhere else, that'd be helpful too, so I appreciate that.
Cool.
All right. Anybody else have any other business for the good of the group this evening? All right, then you know I'm going to entertain one more motion.
Motion to call it quits.
Second.
Okay, motion to adjourn by Andrew, seconded by Deborah. Roll call vote. Andrew,
Yes.
Tim,
Yep.
Yes.
and Deborah's already yes, so we're great. Thank you all so much.
Bon
Bye, y'all.
appetit, everyone. I'm always thinking about food.
Have a good evening.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.